Dark skies are shifting across the region. Explosions deep inside Russia shattered logistics and panicked officials scrambling to contain the chaos. Secret negotiations twist behind closed doors while global powers make moves that could redraw the entire map of this war. Ukraine's forces strike with new precision weapons, testing systems never before seen on the front line, and even the Kremlin's closest allies are beginning to slip from its grasp. But that's only part of the story. A shadow fleet collapses under mysterious attacks at sea. Elite Russian units face crushing losses in urban battles. Turkey sends shockwaves through NATO and Moscow with its bold new stance. And Europe quietly prepares for a scenario no one dared imagine just a year ago. A chain of events stretching, each one pushing the world closer to a dramatic turning point. Everything is accelerating, something big is coming. Let's break down what's happening right now. Hello, this is Ukraine Today. Maria Faraponova here with the latest updates. The night in Kaspiysk, Dagestan, erupted without warning as swarms of drones pierced deep into Russian territory. Residents reported powerful blasts, and Russia's frantic air defense response ended up striking its own civilian infrastructure. The strike was likely aimed at one of the region's key military strongholds, the naval base of Russia's Caspian flotilla. This facility hosts elite units including the 414th Separate Guard Marine Battalion and the 46th Separate Coastal Missile Division, both responsible for shielding the entire coastline. Reports speak of shattered windows in the civilian building and several damaged cars. Just 3.5 kilometers from the blast site stands the strategically important DAK diesel shipbuilding plant. An indication suggests that the destruction is the result of Russia's chaotic air defense fire once again striking the wrong targets. Local authorities have confirmed the attack, yet remain silent about the true extent of the damage.
Today, an enemy drone attack was prevented in our republic. The aerial targets were shot down over the territory of Kaspiysk.
Despite official claims, reports are emerging that the blast may have also reached the Caspian Precision Mechanics Plant, a facility that equips Russian submarines and surface ships. And that's not all. Ukrainian drones swept across multiple regions of Russia, striking targets in Taganrog, the Leningrad region, the outskirts of Rostov-on-Don, and even Volgograd. The geography of these attacks is expanding rapidly.
Restrictions on aircraft arrival and departure have been introduced at the airports of Vladikavkaz, Grozny, and Magas. Similar restrictions are also in place in Volgograd and Tambov.
At this very moment, off the coast of Africa, the tanker that only recently called the Russian ports is sinking. In August, it docked in Taman. Just days ago, it was spotted in Novorossiysk. Then it suddenly went dead still. For a week now, the vessel has shown no signs of movement, as if awaiting its inevitable descent to the ocean floor.
C'est fini. C'est fini.
According to several media reports, the tanker off the coast of Senegal may have been struck by Ukrainian drones. The reason? The vessel was allegedly transporting Russian oil, making it a new target in the battle for control over maritime routes.
It is reported that the oil tanker MT Mersin was hit by Ukrainian drones off the coast of Senegal.
Despite loud speculation, experts point out that such an operation is highly unlikely. The distance from Ukraine to Senegal exceeds 9,000 kilometers. Yet one thing remains true: Russia's shadow fleet is now trapped in fear. And for good reason. Not long ago, in the Black Sea, the SBU's maritime drone swiftly struck two sanctioned Russian oil tankers. It wasn't just ships that burned, it was millions of Moscow's oil dollars going up in flames. Ukraine's defenders refuse to give the enemy even a moment to breathe. On the front line, the armed forces of Ukraine are testing new weapons designed specifically to counter Russia's guided aerial bombs. The General Staff has issued a firm and decisive statement, and nerves are already fraying within the Russian army. Ukraine is entering a new phase of the fight.
In addition, Ukrainian defenders are taking effective measures to reduce the effectiveness of Russian guided aerial bombs. New weapons are being tested to counter KABS.
And this isn't just testing. The results are already evident on the battlefield. In just 3 months, the Air Force's anti-aircraft missile troops destroyed nearly 100 Russian-guided bombs, something that was once considered almost impossible. Ukraine's air defenses are shattering myths and crippling one of Russia's key offensive tools. Turkey has stunned the world with a bold stance. Ankara has declared it is ready to send its troops to Ukraine. One of NATO's most formidable armies appear prepared to openly confront Russia. The world is watching closely as Turkey's Ministry of Defense issues a statement statement that could reshape the balance of power in the region.
First and foremost, a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine must be established. Following that, a mission framework with a clearly defined mandate must be set, and the extent to which each country will contribute must be determined. The Turkish armed forces are ready to support any initiative that will bring security and stability to our region.
This statement came right after a striking remark by French President Emmanuel Macron, who suggested that future support forces could include French, British and even Turkish soldiers. The prospect of an international coalition is beginning to take on an entirely new dimension. Turkey is making a decisive leap forward. Ankara is distancing itself from Moscow and firmly aligning with Kyiv and NATO. President Erdogan is considering the possible deployment of Turkish troops to Ukraine, a direct blow to Putin, who is rapidly losing allies and facing new front of pressure. For Ukraine, this could be a pivotal moment capable of shifting the course of the war. What exactly is Ankara planning, and could this be the move that shatters Russia's ambitions once and for all? Find out in just a moment.
Recep Erdogan has once again stabbed Putin in the back. The president of Turkey did this right after his latest meeting with Volodymyr Zelensky. At that time, both leaders, behind closed doors, according to the press, discussed a number of very important issues regarding a ceasefire in Ukraine and subsequent security guarantees for official Kyiv.
Both President Erdogan and his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky stated that the talks were constructive and positive, although no real details about the negotiations themselves were provided.
This sparked an even greater wave of rumors in political circles. While some reliable sources allegedly claimed that Erdogan tried to persuade Zelensky to accept capitulation and agree to the Kremlin's proposal, others, on the contrary, insisted that the Turkish president was dissuading the Ukrainian leader from Putin's peace plan and urging an increase in military production.
They also discussed the growing defense cooperation, stating that the results of this collaboration will become evident in the future.
And here is the result. The Turkish Ministry of Defense has officially announced its readiness to deploy troops in Ukraine. The troops are reportedly on high alert. Ankara is ready to send a contingent as soon as tomorrow.
Wherever there is a need for peace, security and stability, the Turkish armed forces are the first to come to mind. This is a vivid testament to the effectiveness, deterrent potential and authority of the Turkish Air Force.
It seems that Erdogan has made his choice. He deserves credit. All these years he has skillfully managed to sit on two chairs at once, helping Ukraine while buying energy resources and weapons from Moscow, all the while being a NATO member.
In the first few years of this conflict, Erdogan stated that he was essentially the only person who had good relations with both Moscow and Ukraine, while also being a NATO member and maintaining close ties with Washington.
However, as time goes on, it becomes increasingly difficult, and Erdogan is far less inclined to continue his friendship with the bloody Russian dictator. After the latest sanctions imposed on Russia, Ankara can no longer buy oil and gas in the same volumes at discounted prices, which means Turkey has no reason to coddle Putin and Russia anymore.
It is worth noting that in the past few months, relations between Turkey and Moscow seem to have cooled somewhat. Erdogan still communicates with Putin, but not as often as before. There have been fewer personal meetings, and one of the factors contributing to this is that, with Trump's election as president, Turkey has significantly improved its relations with Washington, and especially Erdogan's personal ties with Trump have become very close.
But for the Kremlin, the growing friendship between Trump and Erdogan threatens to be disastrous. Without the blessing of the Turkish president, Russia could lose a huge share of its grey imports and dual-use goods, among other things, which are actively brought in through Turkey.
The process of restricting and even reducing economic contacts with Russia is underway in all directions. Turkey has been the Russian Federation's largest partner for a long time, not only in the energy sector, but also in terms of an enormous amount of economic cooperation. But Turkey too will be cutting back.
As for aid to Ukraine, it seems that Ankara is giving its companies the green light here. After the Turkish Ministry of Defense made loud statements about sending its contingent to our country, a number of Turkish companies simultaneously announced the establishment of joint military production. So it is quite possible that very soon, not only Ukrainian, but also Turkish missiles and drones, which until recently were friendly to the Kremlin, will be flying at Russian oil refineries deep behind enemy lines.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
A shockwave for the occupiers is rising on the horizon. Britain and Ukraine are launching a top-secret anti-drone weapon, a new sky predator that obliterates Iranian UAVs mid-air before the enemy even realizes what's happening. Cutting-edge British technology fused with Ukrainian bravery has created a devastating strike that rewrites the rules of modern warfare. A new era of drone combat has begun, and its first thunder is already echoing across the front line. All the details ahead in our report.
Ukraine is strengthening its air defense not only at the front but also on a global scale. The United Kingdom and Ukraine have signed a historic licensing agreement for the production of Ukrainian Octopus interceptor drones, which were specifically developed to counter Russian Shaheds. As Defense Minister Denis Shmyhal emphasizes, this agreement marks a new stage in international military technical cooperation, where Ukrainian technologies form the basis for mass production by partners in the defense coalition.
There are plans for mass production of the interceptors, which could reach several thousand units per month. The manufactured equipment will be delivered to Ukraine to strengthen the protection of our skies. Denis Shmyhal, Minister of Defense of Ukraine.
The Octopus project is currently in the final stage of negotiations and could be launched in the coming months. British Minister for Defense Capability and Industry Luke Pollard clarifies, the United Kingdom is preparing to produce about 2,000 interceptors per month and send them directly to Ukraine.
The United Kingdom is an outstanding leader in research, development, and advanced manufacturing. That's why we can provide what our Ukrainian friends are lacking in this regard. We must be fast, and we must be first. We are starting with drones for obvious reasons, but overall, Ukraine is an important partner for us in developing the technologies needed to deter Russia and rearm Europe. Luke Pollard, Minister for Defense Capability and Industry of the United Kingdom.
For Ukraine, this agreement is not just about expanding drone production. It is an attempt to create a sustainable system to counter the mass Shahd attacks that the aggressor country launches against Ukrainian cities almost every night. The Octopus has already proven its effectiveness on the battlefield. It is compact, maneuverable, and inexpensive to produce. It intercepts enemy drones in the air and provides more flexible and rapid protection than traditional air defense systems. In Ukraine, 3 manufacturers have already received the necessary technologies to produce the Octopus, and another 11 are preparing their production lines. But the key factor is the international scale, with production starting in the United Kingdom. This makes it possible to move from producing dozens or hundreds to thousands of interceptor drones each month. Such a pace could for the first time bring the situation closer to a turning point in the drone war, where until now the numerical advantage has remained with Eritrea. At the same time, Ukraine is developing joint programs with the United States as well. There too, production is being set up for interceptor drones capable of destroying Russian strike UAVs. Washington has not specified whether this concerns the Octopus, but the trend itself is clear. Partners are moving toward a model of not only supplying but also producing together.
Any military project, any project related to increasing the supply of weapons to the front, whether it's regular drones or interceptor drones for Shaheds, they are all important for conducting a full-scale war, both in the air and on the ground. And projects of this particular kind, such as the significant joint production of the documentary Octopuses in both England and Ukraine, are indeed even more critically important for the Ukrainian side, especially during these challenging times. Well, let's put it this way, they won't bring about a turning point in the war in the near future, let's be honest, but at the same time, they will be able to improve the safety of the skies for many, many cities.
At the same time, Ukraine is strengthening not only its defense front but also its financial front. Kyiv and the International Monetary Fund have reached an agreement on a new 4-year support program worth $8.2 billion. As Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko emphasizes, these funds will help finance critically important expenditures and maintain macro-financial stability, without which neither the production of weapons nor the resilience of the defense economy is possible.
The war has pushed beyond Russia's borders as multiple regions plunge into blackout darkness. Moscow is scrambling, bracing for the next shockwave, while Ukraine's forces strike decisively and without warning. Striking footage is flooding the internet, and the reactions of Russian citizens can no longer be drowned out by the Kremlin's censorship. The foundations of the Kremlin's power are visibly shaking. The end feels closer than ever. The first details of these developments and of the energy pressure steadily weakening the aggressor are coming up in our report.
The armed forces of Ukraine are significantly increasing both the number and effectiveness of strikes on Russian heat and power generation facilities. The actions of Ukraine's defense forces are a response to the ongoing strikes on Ukraine's civilian and critical infrastructure.
In order to somehow bring this war to a stalemate, to shift it, we need to learn not only to repel enemy attacks on the front line, but also to suppress their logistics and their aviation. That's why it became necessary. And I'm not even mentioning the need to strike at Russia's military-industrial enterprises and energy system.
By trying to leave Ukrainians without electricity, the Russian dictator is condemning millions of Russians to a dark and cold winter.
If they threaten a blackout, for example, in the capital of Ukraine, then the Kremlin must realize that a blackout will also come to the Russian capital.
This is Belgorod, basically. There's no electricity anywhere in Belgorod at all.
Since the beginning of November, Ukraine has carried out dozens of strikes on Russian electrical substations. Long-range drones are cutting off power in occupied Donetsk and Crimea.
Basically, charge your phones. Looks like they've decided to cut off our power everywhere. I've already counted more than 30 of them.
Cha, Kaluzhskaya, 32, darkness, and then it goes on. Darkness, darkness, darkness.
And cruise missiles and rocket-powered drones are introducing millions of residents in the European part of Russia, including Moscow and the Moscow region, to the delights of a blackout. In addition to Ukrainian weapons, we shouldn't forget about the supply of Western arms, which Ukraine has also recently started using to strike Russian territory.
The corresponding approval has been received. Therefore, we can say that the territories of the Rostov, Kursk, Belgorod, and Bryansk regions are within the strike zone. Both from Western strike systems, let me emphasize this again, such as attacks with Scalp and Storm Shadow missiles, as well as, accordingly, the modernized version of the S-200 surface-to-air missile system.
Before the onset of winter, Ukraine possesses a wide range of powerful long-range weaponry. Bark, Pekla, Polyanitsia, and FP-1 rocket drones, as well as Flaminga and Long Neptune cruise missiles, can reach the largest Russian cities, including heating and power supply facilities in Moscow and St. Petersburg. With
consideration for the climatic features of the Russian Federation and taking into account the tactical and technical characteristics of the Ukrainian strike systems, the Russian Federation is facing a harsh winter, both literally and figuratively. First and foremost, this concerns thermal power plants and other production facilities that sustain the life of major Russian cities.
That's all for now. Stay with us to be the first to know what's happening right now. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.